Welcome to Manifest, hosted by international evangelist, teacher, and author Perry Stone. Enjoy unique insight into prophetic and practical truth. It's time to feast on fresh manna, so get ready to be blessed and encouraged. And now, here is your host and teacher, Perry Stone.
Welcome to the Manifest telecast today. I am in the city of Jerusalem at the Olive Tree Hotel, and today we're going to begin a brand new series that I'm extremely excited about. For several years now, we have been studying the book of Revelation, and there's a lot of different opinions concerning the book. We're going to talk about that today on the program, but we're excited to be able to say that we've completed a series on the subject, and we'll be telling you about that at the end of the broadcast. What I want to do today is talk about the apocalyptic confusion, because the book of Revelation is the last of the 66 books in the Christian Bible. It's the last book of the New Testament. And the Greek word is apocalypsis, which means the unveiling or the revealing of something which was hidden. The book of Revelation is a vision which was given to the Apostle John while he was a political prisoner on the Isle of Patmos. It was written somewhere around, they believe, 95. Some scholars go as far as to say about 100 AD, but we believe it was probably written about 95 AD, and John died somewhere between 96 to 100 AD. Here's the point that I want to make. Why don't more people study the book of Revelation? Now, this is a question I've had for quite some time. I found out that there are several reasons. Number one, people do not study the book of Revelation because it contains so much symbolism that they believe that the symbolism is confusing. The second reason that people do not study it is because they believe the message is too negative. There are ministers that I have met that don't want any kind of prophetic teaching in their church because they believe it's too negative. And so to them, the book of Revelation is a book about judgments and the wrath of God, and so why preach something negative? That's the second reason people won't study the book. The third reason people won't study the book is they believe the message in the book is too hard to understand because of the symbolism which is used. I mean, there's a flying dragon, there's a pregnant woman in heaven giving birth to a child. It can be at times, just by reading it from the surface, rather confusing. And then another reason is there are a lot of people who believe that the prophecies in the book of Revelation have already been fulfilled. As a matter of fact, when you look at these different reasons why people do not study the book of Revelation, you come to the conclusion that that's the reason why they don't study it, because it just seems to be confusing to a lot of people. What I'd like to do today is to show you the 5 different beliefs that Christians have worldwide concerning the book of Revelation, to give you a better understanding of why some people may be confused concerning the book. The first belief that people have, and again, these are 5 different beliefs, is what's called the Preterist interpretation. The Preterist interpretation is a group of individuals who believe that the book of Revelation, or the end-time prophecies mentioned not just in the book of Revelation, but for example, Matthew 24, Luke 21, etc., have already been fulfilled somewhere in past history. As a matter of fact, the word preterism comes from a Latin word that means past or beyond fulfillment, meaning it's already been fulfilled, something which has already been fulfilled. Some of the preterists believe that portions of the book of Revelation, also Matthew 24, were fulfilled somewhere between 66 AD and 70 AD at the time that the temple was destroyed by the Romans and the siege took place of Jerusalem. Others believe that a lot of the apocalyptic teaching was fulfilled somewhere up around the 4th century, and then when the Bible was compiled, then a lot of the end-time prophecies are invalid. Preterists also have a very strong belief concerning what we call replacement theology. And when you study where preterism originated, it really became strong after the Protestant Reformation, because some people believe it was used to try to counter the Protestant Reformation, because the Protestant Reformation during that time was preaching such things that the harlot of Revelation was the Roman Church, and you know, the false prophet would be a pope, etc. And so some believe that preterism was used to try to counter the Reformation movement. But I will tell you that when you really look at the scriptures, as we do when we study the book of Revelation on our new series, we will show you that preterism is not a correct interpretation of the book of Revelation. Now, the second teaching is called the historical interpretation. I have some very good friends of mine that really love the Lord with all of their heart, and they do believe that the book of Revelation has been fulfilled progressively from the 1st century all the way to our time through history. As a matter of fact, some of them believe that Revelation 9 which is those hordes of locusts that John described coming out from the abyss, that actually was a Turkish army that invaded hundreds of years ago in Europe. Others believe that the Babylonian Mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 is the Roman Church, and a lot of that has been fulfilled in history. In Revelation 17, that in the 1800s when Napoleon came to power, how the Roman Church lost power in France, and some of that they believe was the fulfillment of Revelation 17 and 18. And also, one of the significant interpretations that the historical interpreters use concerning the book of Revelation is that those 10 kings mentioned by John in the book of Revelation and also in the book of Daniel that are going to rule at the end of days, they believe that those were 10 Germanic tribes that actually conquered Rome after imperial Rome fell right before somewhere in the 4th century. So in other words, people who believe the historical interpretation of the book of Revelation have this very, very strong belief that a lot of it has already been fulfilled throughout history. Now we come to the third interpretation that people have concerning the book of Revelation, which is called the allegorical interpretation, meaning that they believe that the book of Revelation is simply an allegory, not to be taken literal, concerning a battle between good and evil. Now this begins this type of teaching, which is called the allegorical interpretation of the book of Revelation, began in the Alexandrian school under an early father named Origen, who taught that the book of Revelation was one great allegory. And he actually went beyond the natural symbolism used in the Bible to interpret the book of Revelation itself. And basically what happened is this, that he took the book of Revelation and it was basically a battle between good and evil, between God and Satan, between the city of Jerusalem and the earthly Babylonian systems of the world. In fact, he wrote a book called The City of God, which became quite famous. The early father did. Now, this school of thought basically makes the entire book of Revelation an allegory. And I will show you again later in some of the teaching that we're going to do and also in the series that we've completed that the book of Revelation is not an allegory. Now, there are places that you can use it to make it an allegory, to share practical truth and information in it, but you can't take the literal interpretation of the book of Revelation and then turn it into an allegory. Number 4 is, and this is a real popular opinion, is called the Amillennialist view. Now, the Amillennialist view believes that the book of Revelation is 7 phases of church history that have occurred throughout history. The reason they say amillennialist is because that means no millennium. In fact, the Latin A there in front of the word millennial means no, and of course the word millennial means 1,000, so it means no 1,000. So literally the amillennialists are individuals who do not believe in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, although the word reign with Christ 1,000 years is mentioned 6 times in the book of Revelation chapter 20. These individuals do not believe that is a literal reign. As a matter of fact, they make that a spiritual reign. Now, what's so funny is some of the individuals who have been amillennialists, will talk about how that they believe that, the millennium may have begun back at the time when Christ raised from the dead for 1,000 years. Well, if that's the case, it's all over. There's other individuals that have taught, and I've heard some of these individuals that'll knock on your door, and they want to witness to you. And some of these individuals teach that we are already in the millennium. Now, the problem with that teaching, let me just say up front, to teach that we are now in the 1,000-year reign of Christ absolutely can't be, because when Christ rules and reigns for 1,000 years, the Bible said that Satan is going to be bound during the 1,000 years. Now, if we are in the 1,000-year reign right now that's mentioned in Revelation 20, then Satan is not bound. And if he is bound according to this teaching, I'd sure hate to see it when he's loose, because the whole world is in a spiritual mess right now. So these are different opinions and different beliefs of interpretation. Now, after many, many years of just studying, in fact, we don't say this in any way to sound bragging of ourselves, because we're certainly not. We have about 65,000 hours of personal Bible study, because every day we spend probably 8 to 10 hours a day in the Word, literally every day of our life. So after really researching the different views of interpretations, I tend to lean on what's called the futuristic interpretation of the apocalypse. Now, the futuristic interpretation is broken down something like this. Revelation chapter 1 is past. It is a vision that John saw of Jesus Christ while he was on the Isle of Patmos, where we have the long robe on and the gold belt, the resurrected Son of God. Then in Revelation chapters 2 and 3, in John's day, When the book was written, that was the prophetic present. In other words, John was addressing the 7 churches of Asia in the book of Revelation, chapter 2 and 3, so that was the present. Then there are the things which shall be hereafter, which is mentioned in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. And from chapter 4 of Revelation all the way to chapter 22, it is futuristic, meaning it has not happened yet, but it will happen in the future. So after really studying in detail, and believe me, I study other people's beliefs. I don't just study what I want to believe and try to preach what I want to believe, but what we try to do is, because we're going to encounter people who do not believe the way that you may accept or believe. So what you have to do is you have to study what they believe to try to see if it matches up to what you believe, or to give an answer to them if they have a question. So I do believe that in the book of Revelation, after these 65,000 hours of Bible study, now not just on the book of Revelation, don't misunderstand me, on the entire Bible, but after that length of time, I believe that chapter 4 of Revelation to chapter 22 falls under the category of a futuristic interpretation. We find out, let me give you some other reasons. Let me just, I've got a little outline here I want to go by, so follow me carefully as I share with you why I believe that the book of Revelation is better to be understood as a futuristic book from chapter 4 to chapter 22. Here's number one. Number one is because the judgments found in the book of Revelation have never happened anywhere during history. Revelation 6:12 through 16 says, the stars fall from heaven, and the heaven departs like a scroll, and every mountain has moved out of its place. Hasn't happened yet. Revelation 9 verse 15 said 1/3 of the men on earth are killed. Hasn't happened yet. Revelation chapter 8, 7 through 12, 1/3 of the tree ships are destroyed by an asteroid or some kind of a star falling from heaven. Hasn't happened yet. Nowhere in history. Chapter 17 and 18, which is Mystery Babylon, destroyed in 1 hour. Hasn't happened yet. Chapter 13, verse 18, here's a big one. Everyone on earth that receives a mark in the right hand or in the forehead that can't buy or sell without the mark has not happened yet. In fact, that could have never happened without the technology that we have today. So point number one, the book of Revelation is futuristic because the judgments mentioned in the book have not happened yet anywhere in history the way they are recorded in the book. Let me give you number two. Number two is the book of Revelation has not happened yet from chapter 4 to 22 because the return of Jesus mentioned in Revelation 19 is literal and not a spiritual allegory of some type. For example, in John chapter 14, 1 and 2, Jesus said he would go prepare a place for us. And if he prepared that place, he would come again and receive us. That has not happened yet. In Acts chapter 1, when Christ ascended from the Mount of Olives, which is just a few miles from where I'm standing here in Jerusalem today, the 2 men in white apparel that we believe were angels said, this same Jesus taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you've seen him go. Then we find in 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 through 17, the Lord returns with a shout, the voice of the archangel with the trump of God. Then we read in 1 Corinthians 15, 52, that when that trumpet of God sounds, we're going to be changed from mortal to immortality, meaning that those references relating to the return of Jesus Christ have not yet happened yet, and they are literal and not spiritually interpreted in a metaphor or an allegory. When you begin to look at Matthew chapter 24, verse 30, listen to this verse. They shall see the Son of Man coming in power and great glory. That's also found in Matthew 13, 26 and Luke 21, 27. 1 John 3 and 2, when Christ shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him just as he is. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6, they will see the scars in his hand and say, where did you get the wounds? And Christ will say, I got them in the house of my friends. All these references that I'm giving you from both the Old and New Testament indicate that in the future, the Christ return is not a spiritual return where no one sees him, but it just happens. It is a literal physical return of Christ to the earth. Now, here's something I want to tell you that's interesting. People who teach a spiritual coming of Jesus, which they have done this in the past, sometimes will take dates from the book of Daniel or the book of Revelation, like the 1,335 days, the 1,290 days, and they turn them into years, and they try to set a date when the Lord's coming. When he doesn't come back, they'll say, oh, he came back spiritually, you just didn't see him. My friend, nowhere does he return spiritually. He returns physically in a body, literally, that people, according to Zechariah chapter 13, can actually reach out, touch. Zechariah 13, verse 6. Now, something else I want to show you, because we're talking about the return of Jesus being visible. Let's put some scriptures together here that are what we call prophetic scriptures to see what they have to say about the subject. In Matthew 24 and verse 30, Christ returns in the clouds of heaven. In 2 Thessalonians 1:8, he returns in flaming fire. In Zechariah 14 and verse 4, he will initiate an earthquake on the Mount of Olives when he returns to Jerusalem. Zechariah 19 verse 14, he shall return with the armies of heaven when he comes back to earth. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 7, he returns with the angels of heaven when he comes back to earth. In Revelation chapter 20 and verse 2, he will physically bind Satan using an angel of the Lord to bind Satan for 1,000 years when the Messiah Christ returns to earth. So the point that I want to make, and I don't want you to miss, is that according to the Scripture, especially these verses that are strictly found in the New Testament and those from Zechariah, indicate that when Christ returns, it is not an allegory, it's not a metaphor, it's not invisible, it is spiritual, very visible, and very seen. Now, the third thing I want to tell you is this. The reason that I believe the book of Revelation is futuristic, and it is dealing with the future, is because the rule and reign of Christ on earth for 1,000 years is a literal rule and reign. Now, I do know that there are individuals who teach and believe in what's called amillennialism, that it's not a literal reign or it's a spiritual reign of some kind. But here's the verses. In Revelation 5, 9 and 10, it says, we will rule and reign with him on earth. 2 Timothy chapter 2, 11 through 12, Paul wrote to Timothy that said, we shall reign with him. Now, that's not just Paul and Timothy, that's all the saints who love his appearing. Revelation 20 and verse 4, there is a resurrection of those who have been beheaded during the tribulation, and John said they will rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. Revelation 22 and verse 5 said they shall reign forever and forever. Now, the point I make again, I want to make this very clear, is the millennium is not an allegory. It's going to literally exist, that word meaning 1,000 years. And in Revelation chapter 20, 6 times it mentions a 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth, and we will rule and reign with him. This is why there's a necessity of a resurrection of the dead and a necessity of the resurrection of those who were martyred during the tribulation, is so that they too can rule and reign with Christ when he comes back to rule here on earth. So the reign of Christ is literal, not an allegory, not some kind of a spiritual something that the church takes over and Jesus just watches us from heaven as we take over everything. But let me read something to you. Papias was personally heard John preach, and he was a friend of Polycarp. Polycarp was an early father that was personal friends with John, who wrote the book of Revelation. And in a history of the church, here's what it says. This is a quote from that period. There will be a period of 1,000 years after the resurrection of the dead, and that the kingdom of Christ will be set up in a material form on this very earth. Justin Martyr wrote in the dialogue, but I and others who are right-minded Christians on all points are assured that there will be a resurrection of the dead and 1,000 years in Jerusalem, which then be built, but adorned and enlarged, the prophets Ezekiel and Isaiah and others. So what he's saying he knows that there'll be a resurrection and a 1,000-year rule of Christ on earth in Jerusalem. And these are just early fathers that understood that 1,000-year reign was a literal 1,000-year period of time. So we also understand that the reign of Christ on earth has to be literal because there is a temple, and this is mentioned in Ezekiel chapters 44 through 47, that there is a temple which is going to be built in the city of Jerusalem, and it's going to be where the Messiah is going to rule. The Zadok priesthood is going to be reestablished, and the saints are going to come every year, according to Zechariah, and ascend to the Feast of Tabernacles and worship the Lord. Now, here's something I want to say to you. If the prophecies that some of these people look at that are end-time prophecies, last-day prophecies, prophecies about the return of the Lord or the coming tribulation, if these prophecies have already been fulfilled, then let me ask you a question. If the church has replaced Israel and Christians have replaced the Jews, if the tribulation, the Antichrist, false prophet have already come and gone, if the 10 kings were 10 tribes and have already come and gone, if the judgments have already come and gone, then what is there left to be fulfilled in the book of Revelation, in the Bible, in the book of Zechariah, in Isaiah and Jeremiah? My point is that if all these things have already happened, that means there's nothing left to be fulfilled. Now, we could get into another debate just on that little thought alone. The point is that the best choice of looking at the book of Revelation is to understand that it is a futuristic book and that there is coming a time in the future called the time of Jacob's trouble. Now, I do want to make it clear, as I said earlier, that that the book of Revelation can be a very complicated book to understand, but the reason you should study it is the Bible puts a blessing on the persons that will study from the book of Revelation. And you're blessed to read it, and you're blessed to hear, and you're really blessed if you keep the words of the book. So this is why we spent years, and I mean many years, looking at the book and digging word studies out, looking at history, looking at the references, and combining it all together to be able to one day be able to present to the body of Christ, and not just the body of Christ, but people who don't even believe the book or don't believe prophecy, but to present something to them that would help them to be able to simply understand what the book is talking about. So here's what I'm going to do. In just a moment, I'm going to go to a break, and I'm going to present an offer to you that is a brand new offer where we have taken the book of Revelation and done 14 hours of teaching. This is probably the most detailed subject I've ever taught on in the history of my ministry, and it's the most detailed subject of prophecy that I've taught on in the history of my ministry. And I'm pleased on this very first program to offer this special offer to you. Now, once again, the book of Revelation is the one book that needs to be studied and it needs to be understood. Because in the last days in which we're living, and I do believe we're in the last days, you and I both need to be totally aware of what God is doing. We need to be aware of the time of the end. And not just for us, we need to be aware of it for the fact that our loved ones who may be lost, who may be unbelievers, need to come to that experience and that relationship with Christ. Well, God bless you. Now listen, stay tuned, because I'm going to go to a break, and I'm coming back with this very, very special announcement in just a moment.
Do you have tough questions about end-time prophecy? If so, here are hundreds of answers. Perry Stone's new advanced study, Breaking the Apocalypse Code. Difficult and controversial questions are answered in an easy-to-understand format as you see and hear Perry Stone's teaching, Breaking the Apocalypse Code. In this new 7-DVD advanced study series, Perry gleans from thousands of hours of biblical research, tapping into Hebraic rabbinical insight, special word studies, and ancient temple information to present this landmark prophetic series. The 22 chapters of the Apocalypse are clearly explained in 7 2-hour DVDs totaling 14 hours of eye-opening, exciting prophetic insight. With colorful props, pictures, and video footage from Israel, maps and special charts, you will see and hear the information that will carry you into the future, from the catching away of the church to the descent of the New Jerusalem from heaven to earth at the conclusion of Christ's millennial reign. These 7 DVDs include the following subjects. DVD number 1 reveals the mystery of the Apocalypse Code and the heavenly temple. DVD number 2 examines the creatures and people in the throne room, the priesthood, and the beginning of the tribulation. DVD number 3 explains the mysterious 2 witnesses, the Bema judgment, the great dragon, and the kingdom of the beast. DVD number 4 gives amazing insight into the future Islamic Antichrist and false prophet and the empire of the beast. DVD number 5 explains with clarity the coming mark of the beast 666, the mysterious harlot and mystery Babylon. DVD number 6, preached from Israel, called the Millennial Code, explains the 1,000-year reign of Christ in Jerusalem. DVD number 7 gives prophetic insight into your eternal future when Satan is bound and heaven comes down. When you order, Perry will also include his personal outlines from these teachings, which have been compiled into this study syllabus with over 100 pages. This study syllabus is available only when you order the 7 DVD series. To request the Breaking the Apocalypse Code DVD series and study syllabus, call 1-888-21-BREAD. That's 1-888-212-7323. Or go online to perrystone.org. You may also write to us at Perry Stone, Post Office Box 3595, Cleveland, Tennessee 37320, and enclose your gift of $95 or more and request gift offer AC95. Shipping and handling are included. Spend hours in study with Perry Stone, one of America's foremost recognized prophetic teachers, and hear the latest updates in this dynamic series. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen that watch Manifest, you've been hearing me talk about this series on the book of Revelation for 3 years. They have spent literally months, almost a year, editing the scriptures and everything that's, not just scriptures, but pictures. And we have the manual that I have personally prepared. This is the time to order it. So please take advantage of a great offer, the entire book of Revelation, 14 hours of teaching it. I believe you're going to learn some things you did not know, and it's easy to understand as well. Have a great home Bible study. I want to take a moment and just say that we're excited about this year to see what God is going to do in our conferences and our special meetings. So let's go to the itinerary and give you an invitation to bring the entire family and join me in these areas. On Thursday and Friday, February the 2nd and 3rd, I'll be at the South Georgia Church of God Winter Camp Meeting at the Church of God Campground in Tifton, Georgia. This is about the 4th time that we've been able to go there. Come and let's see. God, I have a word for you, and we're going to have great altar services as well. Then we're going to be coming Saturday night and Sunday, February 4th and 5th, to the Unity Church of God that is located in Jessup, Georgia. George Moxley is the pastor, for several great services right after the main camp meeting there. And then we're going to be coming to Trinity Fellowship, Pastor Jimmy Evans Church in Amarillo, Texas, and that will be on Saturday and Sunday, February the 11th and 12th. We've never been to that part of Texas before. We are excited about that, and we want all the folks that watch Manifest to join us in that meeting. New Life Fellowship, New Life Christian Fellowship, Pastor Paul Zink's church, Jacksonville, Florida, for our, I think this will be our 3rd conference in Jacksonville, Friday, all day Saturday and Sunday, February the 17th through the 19th. And let me tell you something, I've been working on these Jacksonville messages, brand new word from God, and you've got to come and see some of the things I'm going to show you while I'm preaching. That's all I'm going to say. You guys need to be in Jacksonville. Come and join us. And then don't forget the Reformation Weekend featuring Eddie James and his entire team. I'll be preaching. Mark Casto and Eddie will be preaching. That'll be Thursday through Saturday, February 23rd to the 25th. And partners of the ministry, if you can come up here on Saturday at 2 o'clock to 2:30, we're going to have a groundbreaking ceremony at the OCI property as we prepare to build the great building, the gathering place here in Cleveland, Tennessee, February 23rd to the 25th. The assembly at West Monroe, Louisiana on March the 2nd through the 4th. And don't forget that great conference in Griffin where we're going to unlock the book of Daniel. You know, I'm really excited about this because people don't realize that when you go throughout the book of Daniel, there are so many things getting ready to happen. Alignments right now in the earth that are prophesied in the book of Daniel. And we're going to take the book of Daniel and the prophets of the Bible, and we're going to give you a fabulous picture at 2 places. It'll be Griffin, Georgia, and Granville, Michigan. And so that's some of the places we're going to be coming to, and I hope and pray that you'll be able to join me in these very special locations. Let me say this, if you don't know Christ as your Lord and Savior, it is time to get right with God. That's our prayer for you, that we'll see you in heaven one day. I'll be back next week with a new program from Israel.
Travel to Israel with Perry Stone for his 2012 prophetic tour. The date is November 20th through 29th. Go online at perrystone.org or call 1-888-321-3629 for more information and how to register. Seating is limited, so call today.